stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Is everything ready to go? The phone on?
No, the phone's not on. I'll turn it on as soon as you're done.
Okay. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Scott, I'll move the consent agenda for you.
These are read at my back door.
Second.
Record show, all members are present. We have a motion by Supervisor Whitman and a second by Supervisor Shea for the consent agenda. Any discussion? No. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign.
Scott, I'd like to amend the agenda by removing item 3A from the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, I'll check with Tammy after the meeting and see if she's got a copy of it.
Do you second on that?
Yeah, we're gonna need a
I'll
second.
second that to figure out that.
Okay. A second, to remove, got a motion by Supervisor Whitman and a second by Supervisor Schultz to remove item 3A from the agenda. Any discussion? Okay, we're just going to wait and see what the 2080 agreement has to say. So, anything else? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, next up we got Brenda Marion Waring, President CEO, Iowa West Foundation.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Update and discussion of grant award cycle. Brenda? Morning.
I really just wanted to make myself available to present and tell you what we're doing with Cycle 3. I know you probably saw the press release and you have it in your packet, but just to be available and answer any questions you might have. Of course, Lynn participates and he hears what we have to say about it, but the rest of you probably have some interest too. So I'm just going to go through this press release and highlight a couple of items. One of the bigger issues that we're really working on is the workforce challenges throughout the community. That's not a surprise to anybody. The Chamber has done a very nice job. This is the second year of granting them the money to build their capacity to run that workforce program. So we continue to be supportive of that. The city, we granted their the second and final phase of their First Avenue with another $1 million, and then also an additional $26,000 for a B-cycle station that will sort of be the bridge between the riverfront and downtown. It's about halfway. Also, B-cycles do really well at high schools, and with the grocery store there, it will be maybe a little bit more consumer resident driven and less tourist driven there. Going through the list, you may see at the top of the list there is Anawim Housing. When we did the homelessness study, we heard from both the Sherwood Foundation who managed the study and also our partners here, Micah House, New Visions, that one of the biggest issues is trying to find supportive housing such that the great bulk of the support that's coming from philanthropy is going to emergency shelter. It's kind of like trying to run your health system through an emergency room. Trying to get somebody from a shelter into an apartment doesn't often work because there's a gap in their ability to receive their services. They go from 24/7 care to, we'll see you next month, good luck. And so what we're trying to do is find somebody who can help us bridge that gap. So we're starting out with a small grant to Anawim, which is based in Des Moines, but they also have services in Sioux City and Cedar Rapids. They're the largest supportive housing operator in the state of Iowa. We think trying to find an Iowa partner who understands the rules, the budgets, how to make it work in Iowa is a good way to approach this. So I'll be back with more information on how that might work. You see Avoca Fire Department, Cass County Fair, City of Griswold, City of Sydney, trying to make sure we're serving the rural areas. Council Bluffs Community School District, I'll note that we did fund Blink. That is again for Council Bluffs school districts, but we've had many conversations with the school district and with Lewis Central and the city that we've got to start pushing that out to Lewis Central. There's some technical challenges, but we want to get down to the Twin City area where there's a real need for better Wi-Fi capacity. So we're expecting to see that one come up next. But for now, it's one more, I think the last of the really viable Council Bluffs School District projects. Golden Hills RC&D, you were all very familiar with them. Last year, because of the funding available through COVID relief, they were able to get some funding that allowed Michelle to really focus on building her capacity and her staff, and she was able to do some great things with that. So we wanted to fund her ability to focus on building capacity so she isn't always out there trying to drum up new business. That operating support is considered as supposed to be a one-time grant to help her figure out how to do some fund development on her own. The Iowa West Foundation Initiative Capacity Building Fund on the top of the last page, that's to do more of the work trying to support the nonprofits in the area to help them get better at fundraising and board support and maybe some communication and how to use social media, really giving them better tools to be stronger organizations. The Nebraska Enterprise Fund, that is the organization that's working with our entrepreneurial task force, which is now led by Paula with Advanced Southwest Iowa. They are the entity that's able to give money directly to a lot of new businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurs. They're really doing a lot of good work among the Latino population here in Council Bluffs and Southwest Iowa. So we actually funded forward what was slated for next year. We gave it to them this year because they're able to push that out the door. And right now is when those small businesses and those entrepreneurs really need the funding. So we accelerated that. And then, of course, New Visions Homeless. I know that's an area that you have a particular interest. We continue to fund their operating support. And we will work with them as they transition their leadership, whenever that might be. That's all I have to say. Any questions? Be happy to answer them.
I've got a couple if I can, but now please, if I ask for too much, you can always say no.
I can say no.
What, on that Lewis Central mental health, children's mental health, what are we doing? What are you doing there?
So that's been an 8-year pilot project that has been focused on mental health at Lewis Central. With COVID, there's a lot of information in the news about children's mental health being an issue that is widespread. We're closing down that Lewis Central program so that Heartland Family Service can put together a broader program that will be made available to all of the, hopefully, certainly the community, the school districts in the immediate region, but I would think throughout Pot County eventually. So broadening the program.
Okay. And then the 712 initiative, is that funding going down or staying the same or from last year?
It's the same as last year. I think you all know the history of the 712 initiative. It was created and put together by Iowa West, and so there was we were the sole source of funding. As they've developed and grown, they founded additional sources, so we're reducing it. They actually got the same funding earlier this year, but they asked if they could get that shifted to a cycle so that they could plan their annual budget more efficiently. So we're essentially committing 2022 budget dollars in 2021 so that they can develop a 2022 budget with a little bit more confidence in how that's going to work. They won't actually get those funds until they finish up what they had committed to for 2021, but they know that they can budget for them.
Okay. That's all I have. We're still working with the Golden Hills RC&D and Advanced Southwest Iowa on the Rural Cities program.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. I don't have anything else. I appreciate you coming in and I certainly appreciate all you do.
I will plan to do this after each of our grant cycles, so 3 times a year I'll try to come in and be available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you.
Okay, so the grant cycles switched to the 3. And this is this considered the 3rd?
This is a 3rd, and I don't know how long it used to be 4, there's
Right.
been 3 cycles for several years.
Yeah.
This is the 3rd of 21, so the next one will be March, I think.
Okay.
So I'll get on your calendar.
For March?
Yeah.
When are those due, Brenda?
Oh boy, February 1st, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. So there was probably bucket load of other requests that you went through.
You know, we had, as I recall, we had about 23 or 24 requests this cycle, and we funded 18 of them.
Great.
So,
Okay.
the other thing we have done grant workshops so that people know how to apply. Our plan is to take at least one workshop a year out into the county so that some of those rural communities have easier access. Of course, they can come via Zoom, but this, it's always nice to have a human being in front of you. So that's the goal for 22.
Right, and appreciate you continuing to, and it's not in this cycle, but support the city's grants, for those communities and such, so.
Yep, absolutely.
Big deals for those,
A lot of them made a big difference out there.
I'm excited about what this project that Tim referenced, where we're working with Golden Hills and Advanced Southwest Iowa to really create a list of projects. We get, goat stalls, we get requests for goat stalls. I think we can do better than that. But the cities don't have the capacity to sit down and think about it far enough in advance. And so, hey, there's the deadline, what we ask for. Hopefully what we're doing right now will build a list that they can start drawing from.
great.
Yeah, I guess last thing I'll say is at some point I want to continue our conversations we had last week with, or I guess earlier this week, last week, whatever day it was.
Yes.
Because I think we didn't really get to finish that conversation, so.
Yes, we will do that.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thanks a
Brenda.
lot, appreciate it.
Appreciate everything you guys do. Okay, next up, we have David Byer, CIO, discussion and/or decision to approve and authorize CIO to sign a contract for Microsoft 365 migration services.
Well, good morning, guys. So we've went through the process of putting together an RFP, receiving proposals. We received 5 proposals back. The vendor that we picked, ThinkSpace IT, fit all of our needs, and we were very happy with their proposal. We vetted them by calling some of their customers that they've worked with in the past. We did that with our final 2, and they were the winners, or the ones that we liked the best. We like them because they're local, they're in Harlan, and we like the idea of doing in-person meetings and being able to have in-person training. They have that small town feel, which I think we appreciate. We do appreciate. What I mean by that is customer-centric, no hidden fees. The price is the price, and we're going to give you everything you're asking for. So ThinkSpace is the one that we liked. Their quote was or the proposal is for $50,750. When I did the IT budget last fiscal year, this was an item that was taken out of the budget, out of my IT budget, and because it was a one-time cost. And I think the idea was that it would be a gaming expenditure, but that's up to you guys to decide how.
It was also, you estimated it to be 30,000, right?
I estimated it to be 40,000, so this is 10,750 more than that. So I can do.
Is that gaming? I didn't feel like it was gaming.
Maybe it wasn't game. Maybe it was some other.
The bond.
I don't remember. We'll have to go, we need to have another meeting on our capital plan anyway, so we need to go.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, you just mentioned gaming.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong there.
I think we did a bond for that. Thought we did. Or maybe we couldn't do the bond, and that's why we went to gaming. I don't know. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Doesn't matter.
But to answer your question, yes, 40,000 was what I had originally thought it might cost. This is 10,750 more. So I can certainly, out of the IT budget, pay that difference if that's what's needed.
You got money in your budget?
I do have money in the budget for that, yep. I could. So I'm looking for your approval to sign the contract and also for understanding of how it's going to be.
When's the timeline to start? Is that January?
The go live is mid-January if we were to
Go
go.
live is mid-January, so
Yep.
you're getting ready to start now?
Yep.
You need a motion for that? Mr. Bell. I'll make that motion. Move
I'll
forward with
second.
that. I think there's probably gonna be some more questions for you too.
What, is this the one-time fee then,
This is the one-time fee for helping with the migration.
okay, and then what's
The ongoing?
yeah.
The ongoing would be for the Microsoft licensing.
Is that these folks or somebody else?
It's through them, they'll help us with the licensing, but, I mean, Microsoft gets the money, certainly.
Right.
And, so that is, roughly $100,000 a year. I have that in my budget now for this fiscal year that we're in now. So, and it all depends on who does, what applications we're giving each person. I've sent out some spreadsheets to users already, or department heads to decide what they want, for their departments to help me determine what needs to be purchased.
That's $100,000 a year. So you're gonna have 50 for this first year.
Correct.
So,
Are we approving
no,
the
just
40 or the contract?
the kind of
50.
We're approving the 50, but you're taking 10,
I
7.
can if that's the way the board wants to proceed.
Well, is that, kind of a carte blanche deal that you can add and take away as, those
Well,
services with?
It'll always be ever-changing, that
Will.
target, because as people come and go, as people, we add employees or we subtract employees, the number of licenses will change and what they use those licenses for.
Okay.
There's
So does
10 different licensing levels. I mean, it's
Right.
a complicated
Yeah.
matrix, but
It is. So will Microsoft bill you on or these folks?
it'll come through these folks, but it'll be an annual basis.
It'd be an annual basis.
Yep.
So is there a true up or something?
There's I want to call it almost like open enrollment, where once a year, you can rebalance your licensing.
So once you add or have what you got for that year,
You can with Microsoft, you can always add licenses, good for them.
they're
But
gonna,
once a year, you can subtract.
so if you add a license during the year, they're gonna charge you for that license.
Correct.
But if you subtract the license for that year, you won't see it.
We can't subtract except for a certain time
Till
frame.
the next,
Yep,
okay.
David, and the 100 you think will cover all the licenses then?
I do, yep.
Okay,
Based on the feedback I'm getting so far and what I've estimated,
it'll go up. and down.
we should be pretty much the same most years because we don't add a lot of employees. We have a lot of replacement employees, one employee leaves, new employee comes on, they get the same license.
Right.
There's a very few instances, I think, where we're gonna be adding lots of employees. The only time where it would increase is if we add employees or we increase the license from a lower one to a higher one. But I think once we're locked in and once we're moving on this thing, we'll be pretty well, locked into a number. It's pretty static.
Are you guys gonna go with that, what is it, that authentication where you have to?
Two-factor authentication?
Yeah, two-factor, yeah, sorry.
Yes. For some people, probably not everyone. So here, cybersecurity is a tough game, right? Because you gotta protect your stuff, but it always creates another hurdle, right? And hurdles are never fun. But to protect your stuff, you've gotta have hurdles because the hurdle's for the bad guy, not for the good guy. And so it's a necessary evil sometimes. But the way we're moving here is we're putting our email and our files in the cloud,
Yeah, I just don't
not
want,
here locally. We're taking them from our secure Pot County environment and putting them in the secure Microsoft Azure environment. And it's accessible from anywhere.
I hate it.
What's that?
I hate the two-factor.
I understand.
Yeah,
It's necessary evil.
So there's to it.
So what I'm saying is we might end up doing a hybrid where maybe public safety or healthcare types
Just
would
leave me
be.
out of it and then I won't complain and
I-
it's easy, right?
We want to make it so that Justin doesn't complain.
Well, I think
How do we do that?
the rub there is though, reading I guess, journals and the articles that are out there is, from an insurance standpoint, if you don't have some of those, you may not even get insurance, or your insurance rates may go up if you do.
Yeah, the problem though is that on the back end of that is that now our employees are gonna be required to have a cell phone that it sends the code to. And then the question becomes, do you have to pay your employees a stipend now because they gotta use the cell phone to do the two-factor authentication? That's where I have a huge problem with it, because it's gonna cost a lot of money. I don't wanna do that.
Well,
I think we're in a world today where cell phones are part of life, and you get one-time passcodes for everything. Your bank, your work stuff, we all log into websites where you get a one-time password for work. All of us do.
No, I know,
And
I'm aware.
paying the stipend for a text, as far as I know, all texts are free these days. Everyone gets unlimited text. So there was a time where text cost X number of cents per text. That world's gone, so.
But the problem is, I know, we can go down this rabbit hole, but
Yep.
I mean, the problem is that we're requiring people now to have a phone to have that two-factor authentication. That's the issue. So, I mean.
And is that a
It's
work-based
gotta
thing or
be
not?
data, you know, they have to have, I don't know.
Yeah, we're trying to protect data, that's all we're trying to
Is that
do.
the only way to do a two-factor authentication, is through the phone?
They make these key fobs, but I don't think we wanna mess with it.
There's fingerprint, there's facial recognition, there's, but with this, it's a one-time password. With the thing we're talking about today,
Right,
it's a one-time password.
okay.
No, it's gonna be fun.
David, how many employees do you think are going to need the entire Microsoft suite of Excel and all that stuff?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but last check, when I checked yesterday, I think we're at 575 different, employees.
I gotta be clear, because I don't think they should go down the path of using something that's not like a Microsoft suite. Like, I don't wanna use some random other version of Excel that's out there, just because it's.
No, what I'm talking about is different levels of licensing within Microsoft. So some people will get email only,
Right.
some people will get the whole package, and there's some that are in between.
Yeah, but are they gonna be able to have like view-only access then of a spreadsheet if I send it to them, if they only have email only?
They should be able to have edit rights and, view rights, but they probably wouldn't be able to create a spreadsheet. Basically, you'd get a link, if you were an email-only person, if you were anybody in the world, you get a link to my spreadsheet, I send it to you, and you can click it and open it and view it, and make an edit or a change. Whether I'm in Pot County or not in Pot County, you just send the link to somebody. But if you need to be able to truly make spreadsheets and work with them and create formulas and tabs and also, heavier lifting, then you need to have the software.
You're confident you've identified who those people are?
I'm doing that right now. I don't have the exact numbers, but I have, I would say, a very good idea of who has what.
I mean, this isn't gonna be an easy migration, and I absolutely think it's necessary to go to this. I just hate the two-factor thing, so.
We can set that per user.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, public safety and any healthcare worker, someone with HIPAA data or data that is HIPAA protected should have two-factor authentication. But we all.
You need a motion's got to allow David, David to sign this.
You already made the motion.
Okay, good.
Mr. Shea?
Mr. Shea, second. So this is an annual contract?
This is a one-time fee.
Right.
The relationship with Microsoft through these
Is
people.
there another contract with Microsoft that we already do that?
No, this will be through these people, yep.
Yeah, but it's an annual renewal,
Correct.
so
Correct.
you'll be back.
It'll be part of my budget each year is what it will be.
Pardon?
It'll be part of my annual budget.
Okay, I guess I didn't see the contract with, what was talking with Microsoft.
Well, we're ending one and starting this one.
What we're ending with Microsoft is buying things onesie twosie. You get a new computer, you get new Microsoft Office licensing. Now we're going to a per user based license subscription model, where it's per user per month for whatever license they pick, or the department head picks for them.
It's nice too, like if you get on any random laptop and log in, you can get all your stuff, you know, and there is benefits to it too.
Yeah, there's the phone apps as well. I mean, you're able to get to any document anytime as long as you have internet connectivity. And even then, without internet connectivity, you could still sync with your desktop or laptop, even if you didn't have connectivity for whatever reason. So this is good. We'll also save on storage space. All of our emails moving from local servers to cloud servers. So there's 6 or 8 terabytes of freed up space. And file storage as well. As people migrate into SharePoint over time, they'll save storage space as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Okay, moving right along. Discussion and or decision to set date and time for public hearing on proposed ordinance 2021-09, an ordinance to amend the Potawatomi County, Iowa Code, Chapter 1.45, voting precinct boundaries.
When would you like that, Mr. Hauser?
Well, we've got it in the ordinance set for
The 7th.
December 7th, and would like to, since we're pushed back by about 6 months anyway, I'd like to get the second hearing, second consideration on the 9th, will be a Thursday, which won't take very long. But when I need the public hearing on the 7th. Since the census got pushed back several months, and then the state legislature got pushed back, we're up against the
Why couldn't we do the second on the 21st?
we could, it's just a matter of expediting the process because it has to be into the Secretary of State and approved by January 15th. And if they don't approve it and it has to come back to us, we just need the time to make changes. And if we don't get it approved and by the Secretary of State by January 15th, then the LSA will do it and send you guys a bill because it's the board's responsibility to get this done.
We got people,
It's your responsibility to draft the
We do
precincts,
it.
right?
We do it. I don't know what's our responsibility, but apparently historically, the elections has always done it for the board, but it's the board's responsibility to do it. If you were in a Plan 2 or a Plan 3 county, then the board would be appointing redistricting boards to draw the districts. It wouldn't be the elections people doing it, it would be a redistricting board. But since we're a Plan 1, then we just do it just to get since you guys aren't in districts, and none of the cities have wards, so we don't need to have the redistricting board, but still it's your responsibility to get it approved. So we're just trying to do it as quick as possible because everybody else got extensions, but the counties don't get extensions. We still have to have it in by January 15th.
So I think the city set a public hearing last night for theirs, I don't remember the date, and then did Carter Lake set?
Carter Lake and Council Bluffs have to do their own. Actually, we drew it for them because they didn't want to do it. So Christie and Linda, there weren't many changes in either of the cities, but Linda had to make a few boundary changes on some of the precincts.
Are they still under the same time constraint then?
Yeah.
But I don't think they're doing theirs until December, I can't remember what was it, 13th? The city?
Could be, I don't know.
Didn't the GIS department do a lot of this work?
Yeah, Jamie helped a lot. Yeah.
Okay, well, so I need a motion to set it for December 7th, 2021 at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Will we set the next date then? Or do you
Well, that's we can change the date on the,
Well, at
Whether it's the
the
9th
December
or-
7th, then you'll say second consideration, December 9th.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and if we could, you know, I'm guessing second consideration on this is not gonna be too, difficult. We could do it, even if, do it, via teleconference. It's just your availability, whether we can get through you guys here on the 9th.
Okay.
Why,
I don't know, that's, you know, I'm saying, you obviously have some ability to do electronic meetings, but I don't know that this is,
Well, this public hearing is just what we're setting today.
You might know more after the public hearing if there are people from McClellan upset that they have to drive to that Quonset hut in McClellan to vote, not get to go to Underwood.
better than going to Underwood?
We had intended to send Hancock and Valley to
Roots, man.
Oakland and send McClellan folks to Underwood. But then we decided, well, in a city election, it wouldn't really be fair to the voters to send the McClellan folks to Underwood to vote for Mitch in the future. Or send the Hancock folks to Oakland, and they're in a different school district too, so.
The good thing about it is that the auditor set the boundaries, so if anybody's mad, we can make sure we send it to him.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's why we have a public hearing, to
Yeah.
see if the public will disagree.
It is.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign.
I didn't get the
The motion.
motion. Did you get it?
I did not get it either,
I
I'm
made
sorry.
it, you should made it.
Thank you.
I was busy talking, I guess.
Scott will make a motion to approve the,
We gotta vote on this.
oh, we didn't vote on this yet?
Yeah, I did vote.
Slow down.
We voted before, guys.
You get
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion passes.
Gotta make a motion to approve the homestead, military, disabled veteran homestead, business property tax credits, and family farm credits as listed by the auditor's office.
Ayes.
There were no disallowances this time, so really not a lot we can do. That's not a lot to change, I guess I should say.
No.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, next up, we have study session. The board held study session regarding 2021 joint city-county land use study with officials from the city of Council Bluffs, Chris and Brandon, thank you. And County Planning Department, discussion only.
Thank you, Mr.
Morning.
Chairman. How you
Yeah,
doing, sir?
you want to pass them out?
Is it all right if I pass out a handout to the board? Okay. So just to preface, I mean, there's a lot of text in this slide, so I do apologize having to read everybody, but the printout I have here for you, chapter 6 of the document, really kind of goes over really the heart of what this is trying to get at, which is the goals, policies, and implementation of it. So we just want to do a printout. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Howard, I'll give you one also, sir.
Thank you.
So just real quick, one question. Is this still in a draft form?
Yes, sir, it is. So
Okay.
I was just gonna, before we get into the presentation, just kind of let everyone know that we met as a steering committee about a month ago, and really what I would consider this to be is more or less kind of the draft to draft final. I would say the document's about 90% done. There's still some mapping edits that we need to make with the consultant group, but I think the goals and policies are pretty well hashed out at this point. I mean, there could be some tweaks to it as needed, but I think what we have kind of in written form is kind of the draft final version of it. So just want to spend some time here just going over with the group. So as you know, city staff and county planning staff have been working together for the last 18 months on the creation of this document. Is there a way I can control the presentation, or do I have to ask you to?
Just give them a mouse.
Have the mouse. Okay.
You might have to sit closer to over here.
Okay, I can do that, that's fine.
button that says present. There.
So city and county planning staff have been working together for the last 18 months on the creation of this document. And really, why we need to do it is, the last update that was done was in 2010. We originally adopted, yes, sir.
No, go.
Oh, I thought you had a question from Brian, I'm sorry. We originally established our current 28E agreement with the county back in 1995, and then periodically, roughly every 5 years, that plan was updated. And the last update, like I said, was accomplished in 2010. So before we get into what we're proposing to accomplish with this latest update, I do just want to kind of establish a baseline. So how we operate today with the county is off of this existing service area map, which was done in 2010. And there's four classifications. So a city service area 1 and 2, essentially any type of subdivision action that would occur in those areas requires annexation today. It's very black and white. It's annexation or you do not do the subdivision. So that's kind of how we operate today. As you get into the county service areas 1 and 2, there could be instances where annexation would be required, but for the most part, it is not. Those areas are deemed to be appropriate for more of rural, kind of low-density type development. So I just want to just kind of put that as the baseline of where we're working off of today. So city service areas 1 and 2, if you want to subdivide, it's going to require you to annex into the city. County service areas 1 and 2, most likely will not have to because those areas are deemed appropriate for rural type development. So the document that we've been working on is comprised of 6 different chapters. I'm gonna really kind of skim over chapters 1 through 5. We'll talk briefly about it because I want to spend the majority of our time talking about chapter 6 and the goals, policies, and implementation. But under chapter 1, we just kind of go over just a summary of why we need to do this study, why we need to update it, and why it's important to have the 28E agreement. Without it, essentially, every subdivision that comes before the county in that 2-mile radius would have to be reviewed by the city. And that could be time-consuming and an arduous task for all entities involved. As part of this study, by law, we can review a 2-mile ETJ area, but for this study, we did look at a 3-mile total area around the city limits, excluding Omaha and Carter Lake. And the reason why we did that is as annexations occur, we want to make sure that there's some idea as to how the land use and if that area would be appropriate for urban type development. So the study area is comprised of 3 areas, but the policies, implementation, and goals would be specific to the 2-mile area. So just wanted to kind of clarify that. Also, as part of this, we did look at some infill areas within the city limits. That would include the Dodge Riverside Golf Course, Lakeshore Country Club Golf Course, some areas along South 192nd Street, the interchange of Highway 6 and College Road. So chapter 2 of the document really is sort of the analytics behind it. As part of this, we did review existing slopes, soils, as well as floodplains. For soils, if it's categorized as an area 3, those are some of the poorest soils to develop, and then as you get to a 1, it's more conducive to development. For slopes, we looked at everything, pretty much 12% grade is kind of the cutoff. Anything greater than 12% we view as being highly constrained for development, but understanding that it still is possible to develop those areas, similar to how, Hills of Cedar Creek or Briarwood.
Sorry, I can't see it.
I apologize. And by the way, I do apologize for having to look at the screen and talk and look back at you, so.
Okay, so you said everything in red is not suitable, which basically.
Well, from a soil suitability standpoint.
So those are all like basically green.
So most of this you would see would kind of align with like your floodplain areas. It's just, soil's just not conducive for that type of development. And then as you continue to layer soils, slopes, and then you start looking at, the watersheds and what areas, could allow for development. And we looked at some specific extensions of, sanitary sewer up through the Pony Creek as well as through Mosquito Creek. And then based on this analysis, we looked at what is probable, what really has potential to be developed and what does not. And what you see sort of shaded here in green are areas that are probable for development, but also in the gray, these areas could be developed. They just don't present as highest and best of an opportunity, when you start layering again the geological, the soils, the floodplains, and the slopes on top of it. So based upon this information, we propose a service area map. We'll talk more about this map as we get into chapter 6, but essentially we have the 4 areas right now with city service area 1 and 2, county service areas 1 and 2. What we're proposing now to do is go to a city growth area 1A, 1B, and then a city growth area 2, and then the blue areas that you see shaded would be county development areas.
Chris, you said we put those maps together, is there a map that puts together the slopes in good quality soil so we can see what's developable for smaller estate type lots?
So that's what this map here really aims to accomplish, Mayor. When you layer everything on top of it, it shows you what is, most conducive, for development versus what is not. I would say we didn't go I haven't examined this parcel by parcel, but if there's a specific area that's in question, we could certainly look at that for the group.
I guess I was thinking, well, it may throw something off, but I suppose if the slopes are steep enough, it doesn't affect it.
Can you go back one slide
Which one?
to that green map you had up? All right, there. Okay, trying to figure out where's the county line at on here?
So this would be the city's boundary.
Oh, I'm
right?
sorry, like where's the southern map? So you got Manawa there. Is that 370 down there, that straight line?
So this map here stops at the Pottawatomie County border, but we did look at
So Applewood Road.
Yeah, but for this study though, we did go down to the Mills County interchange though. So and you'll see that on the service area map here.
Gotcha.
So we did go down that far.
Okay. And then how far east did you go on 92? What's a good intersecting road there?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if we have this.
2 miles, right?
Well, no, we went out 2 miles, but the whole study is 3 miles, and I don't know, Brandon, what was it, like 264th Street or something like that? It was out
That
there.
rings a bell. I can't recall though.
I want to say it's like 246 or 264. Those might be
Where
interchangeable.
that 3 mile
Yeah.
was triggered. And basically aligning with Pony Creek Basin.
Is that the Little Pony? Or is that Pony
The
Creek?
entire watershed of the Pony
Yeah,
Creek, basically
okay.
looking at that.
Gotcha.
So again, let's get back to this map here. So we currently have 4 classifications for growth areas. Right now, we're looking at going to city growth areas 1A, 1B, city growth area 2, and then county development area. And then I'll get into the specifics of what those mean later on.
Chris, can you get back to that map for 1 second? Yeah. Where is everything in yellow or gold or whatever color, is that the 2 mile limit of the city?
So the 2 mile limit is outlined here in this purple. If you see this purple
No,
line.
I think that's the 3 mile study. Oh, no, you're right. Sorry, Chris.
So this right here is a 2 mile area. But again, we went out 3 miles so that as growth and annexation occurs, we have an idea of what that area should be classified as.
So if it's outside the 2 mile limit of the city, it looks to me like you have that in the city growth area 2.
Yes, sir, we do.
Would there be any jurisdiction from the city in that area?
So here's why we're showing it that way, is if you look at kind of this neon green line that runs up through here, this is covering the Pony Creek Basin essentially, and we're showing some utilities extensions that would occur. So our thought process is if this area has potential to be serviced with urban services like sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer, that it would be appropriate for it to be classified as a city growth area. These areas here do have large tracts of land that are still intact. So it does present the opportunity for development to occur that could support the infrastructure costs associated with those extensions. And Pony Creek really is kind of, one of the last untapped areas east of Council Bluffs that has that potential for development. I mean, Indian Creek is pretty much built out. Mosquito Creek, there's some areas kind of north of town, but I think Pony Creek really is the future of development in Pot County, at least on the western side of Pot County.
So then my question comes right back to you then, Chris. Does the city have jurisdiction in that area?
What kind of subdivision
Not the 3
jurisdiction?
mile.
Approval or not approval?
2 mile.
The
So-
city would not have jurisdiction over that area. Theoretically, it is an area though that the city's saying, hey, please make sure you work with us on this. And so we would want to
as this goes through the approval process, we would want to make sure that we update our land use plan, making it noted in there that the city and the county do project this area as one we want to protect for that infrastructure development and work together on the development criteria of that. So if we had a developer come to us and say, hey, I got 100 acres out here, I want to do 10-acre lots on it, big estate kind of things, that's something that we would take back to the city, and realistically, that's not gonna meet the criteria of what we wanna see in that area.
Well,
We would want that-
Wouldn't we wanna see some kind of a plan for the city on the water and sanitary sewer expansions before,
So we,
That's what we're doing here.
I know, but I mean, you know, if somebody come to us and say, gosh, we wanna build 40 homes, but cities, we wanna work with the city to make sure they're aware that this is gonna happen, and their plan for growth is, water line and sanitary sewer, but when? Are we talking 10 years from now, 20, 50,
so we
80?
put money into, well, it's the preliminary budget because it hasn't been voted on, but we have money in the current draft budget to perform a sanitary sewer study specifically on this basin. And why it's important to make these land use projections as outlined here is that study will look at the basin itself and maybe some sub-basins, and it will make some estimations and calculations based on, if you have this whole area and it's relatively undeveloped today, that's X number of acres. That means it'll support X number of houses. And therefore, you need a sewer that's 6 foot in diameter or whatever, and that's what you need to size it for. It's gonna be, I'm just throwing totally fake numbers out there. It's gonna be $50 million to build this sanitary trunk sewer. What we need to do as a city and a county is to work together to protect that investment. If we're gonna lay out that heavy infrastructure like that, we need to be careful that we don't all of a sudden start to build across it or over it within that basin and preclude attachments to that so that we don't recoup the full value of that 6-foot sanitary sewer. Because from the very beginning, it has to be designed to be the correct size to fulfill development in the entire basin.
So we kind of ran into that issue with the water line potentially coming from Bentry, right? Or that's kind of the issue we ran into. Because now we're running it from Mineola north to it, and the development we're doing on 240th Street, Pioneer Trail, which is out of the basin you're talking about. But the water line we're originally going to come from the north, coming south, but it came right into your basin you're talking about. Is that what you're saying, along those lines?
Well, I think if there's going to be a major infrastructure improvement, such as what may be required to fully build out that basin, there's going to be a very fixed cost assumption of what that is and how we'll be able to recoup that cost over the next few decades. But if, for example, the example you laid out, if there was let's say a rural water line that ran through there and we didn't have certain policies in place that address how those subdivisions would eventually come into the city, then that could create a situation where you get some of the upper parts of that basin then impacted by some developments that reduce the future growth potential of that basin. And then all of a sudden, we've laid out $50 million for a 6-foot sanitary sewer when we've reduced our acres in that area and could have downsized it to maybe a 4-foot sanitary sewer for the cost of $40 million. I'm making all these numbers up, but you follow me? What I'm, I guess, concerned about is if we have development in that area that does not address how eventually it connects into the system or annexes into the city, then that investment in infrastructure is at risk.
The other part of that coin on that is, so if rural water would have gone in there and installed that water line from the Bent Tree Water Tower down, and it became a very profitable water line for them, as long as they have a loan against it, Council Bluffs Waterworks cannot come and purchase that infrastructure from them. So they would keep money against that water line, then allowing, basically blocking out the expansion of Council Bluffs Waterworks in that area as well. So it's better suited to keep that infrastructure out of there right now until it all comes in.
Yeah, no, sorry.
So
I didn't
start
mean to
pitting
get off track. I
entities.
just was trying to understand, I guess what helped me, us probably understand this is what that boundary actually is. Like, tell me what the eastern and northern and southern boundaries are. That would, like, what road are you talking about? And then that way, this gives us an idea what your map actually is showing. I mean.
And then
Don't forget, this is not us against
No.
you. This is a big win for the county because you still get the county taxes and we get all the maintenance expense. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
No, I agree with you 100%, Matt, but what's the time frame? I mean, if you have a $50 million, estimated 50
so
million.
here's what I know, Tim, and nobody knows what the time frame is. Nebraska annexation law, Omaha cannot annex outside of Douglas County. And so in 10 to 20 years, Omaha runs out of ground. Then their choices are Sarpy County or Potawatomi County. If we're ready, I think we grow much more rapidly, but it may be 40, 50 years, but still the concepts are valid. If you go out in the middle of that area that's outside the 2-mile limits and put a subdivision that snookers, the old pool game, all of a sudden we can't go around you, and so then it just completely stymies development that would contribute back to the infrastructure installation is our concern as a city.
Yeah, I guess I'm with you 100%. I want to make sure what we do is joint effort, because down the line, I see this. I just want to know, because like right now we got development going off Pioneer Trail possibly, and that there's a chunk of that that's right in your 2-mile window. And so I just want to make sure, as we're telling developers, yep, let's do this, let's develop, that we're keeping in mind what you guys have in mind
And
too.
Chris isn't there yet in his presentation. I think we'll address a lot of some of the questions and concerns here, because what we did when it came down to the policies, we created a lot of brand new subdivision mechanisms that would allow for sort of that premature development in that orange area with some guarantees for future annexation and connection. So we kind of balanced out, whereas today the current policy says if you're in this area over here, if you want to subdivide, you must annex today if you want to do it. And a lot of times the properties are far detached from the city limits, and it's just not possible. They've got to go through 8 of their neighbors in order to annex into the city, and it's not going to happen. So Chris will get there.
All right, sorry.
And just for I mean, these lines, I mean, they don't line up with like specific roads and street. I mean, it is a 2-mile area, so it could fall right in the middle of somebody's property per se. I mean, it's 2 miles from our existing corporate limits is what this purple line reflects.
It's just like taking a compass and drawing a.
Yes, sir, it is. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the city limits isn't a straight line on section lines.
It's not.
Yeah.
So chapter 3 of the document, I'm not going to talk heavily about it, but this addressed some of the infill areas in the city that we see potential for growth, and just identifying what future land uses make most sense there, and how could we service those with, sanitary sewer, water, storm detention, and things of that nature. Chapter 4 of the document, it looked at transportation and traffic, really, which roads are suitable for development, which ones are not. Are there planned roads in the 2-mile and 3-mile area that should be taken into consideration as we develop these policies? And if so, what makes the highest and best use for properties perhaps adjacent to those? Chapter 5 was just a very brief market analysis. We didn't really call it a market analysis, really just kind of laid out, what are some potential funding sources that could be used for infrastructure costs, using TIF, is it, fee in lieu of, developer pays for it all, and really just kind of outlines, how, you don't want to encourage leapfrog development because it gets in the way of future development, which is what Brandon was trying to describe. So it lists out some potential funding sources that, developers could consider, as well as the city and county. So chapter 6 is really kind of the heart of the document. It really lays out all the goals and policies. So it looks at all the future land use scenarios. We also identified a classification for service growth areas, and then the goals and policies, which we'll start to talk about. So again, I just want to reiterate before we start talking specifically, right now the way we operate is very black and white. If you're a city service area 1 or 2, if you want to subdivide your property, do a lot line adjustment, you have to annex. County service areas 1 and 2, you don't always have to annex, but there are certain situations where you might need to. So with that being said, we'll just kind of get into it. So as far as future land uses go, we identified 5 different classifications. Really what you see in green is kind of the ag areas. Those are so far out of reach from any potential city development, and there's either slopes or floodplains, which right now we've deemed to be most appropriate for sort of an agricultural type situation. In red, you can see commercial land uses. So a couple of nodes were kind of called out here. You have the interchange with Mills County, then a couple of areas along Harry Langdon, Wabash, and then up near the intersection of, Highway 6, Hunt Avenue area of the city, and then going up Railroad Highway. What you see here in yellow would be determined to be most appropriate for residential development. One thing that we did not want to do as part of this land use study is kind of categorize what type of residential development makes most sense. What I mean by that is low density, medium density, high density. The thought process there is that you would just let the underlying zoning kind of dictate what densities make most sense. But in general, residential is kind of how we classify those areas.
Chris, I think also, and we'll want to address it through text versus mapping, I would think in that light colored yellow area where you're saying is primarily residential, I think is probably how we should describe it, as primarily residential, but on a case-by-case basis, there may be nodes or intersections, et cetera, that would be appropriate for some, little neighborhood or community area commercial districts. But at this time, at this very high level of looking at the future land use, identifying those is premature. I think it would just be identified on a case-by-case basis that obviously as you start to add rooftops, et cetera, there begins to be the demand for some of that commercial space, especially now in this this environment where a lot of the brick and mortar type stores are struggling. It's really hard to anticipate how much commercial acreage is needed to support X number of rooftops these days. So I think we'll just handle that as we go into the future, but I think we need to handle it in the text that it's understood that there would be appropriate areas for commercial within that large yellow area that's shown on that map there.
And during our study session with the contractor that we had, I did ask that they add in the county line at the south on this map. And then there was some of the ground that they have currently designated as agricultural in the south. I told them it would be better suited to move that over to the residential estate use because of the topography of it. Some residents we might have some kickback because it's not actually very suitable for agricultural with as hilly as it is, but it might make sense more in the residential estate, kind of like what they did on the northern section up around the old Lincoln Highway area where obviously the hills are at is all designated as residential.
And so Matt, just, we did make some of those changes. Were you anticipating that this brown would go further north? Because this is a different
No,
map
I was
on
more
this.
towards the south.
Oh, the south.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that's Mills County down there at that line, so.
All right, so we'll start talking about the growth areas. So growth area 1, I'm gonna go ahead and read this slide. I do apologize, but I think it's important to kind of hammer home what city service area 1 aims to accomplish. So this is land located in the area that has a priority growth in an urban development pattern. It's generally adjacent to the city limits and is already substantially developed. and may or may not have access to services including water, sanitary, storm sewer, electricity, gas. We do not anticipate these properties to be further developed unless there's some assemblage of some large tracts of land to facilitate that type of development. This is not an area that's a priority for future annexation unless it provides a continuous connection to future development, but it may be annexed as subdivisions or developments of individual sites occur. And then further subdivision is possible if the remaining parcel to be split is 20 acres or greater and retains potential for development at urban standards. So really these areas here that we're looking at would be sort of north of the airport along Highway 6, some areas off of McPherson, and then as you get around Cardinal Lane, and then just north of Highway 92. So most of these areas already have significant development within it as county subdivisions. It's not a priority for us to annex at this time unless there's some type of larger development that would necessitate the expansion of urban services for that type of development.
So, did the study look, or will it look at the cost to those county subdivisions to bring them up to city standards or not?
This study did not focus on that.
Okay.
Again, like Brandon talked about, there will be a follow-up sanitary sewer study, but I don't know if we've gotten the specifics if that's going to cover those county subdivisions.
No, that will not cover retroactively bringing in old subdivisions. I think really, we wanted to be sure that we had an area, this 1A area that's shown in that dark red. We wanted to be sure that we had an area defined that really described those areas that have already been substantially developed. There will be minimal subdivision activity in there. I think we'll see a lot of like lot line adjustment type things between neighbors and stuff like that. So we need to be able to accommodate that, but not necessarily in some cases require annexation.
Okay.
I think that's a key thing, but it is important. Those 1A areas are important mainly because just their proximity to city limits. So we do care, but for the most part, they've been very subdivided out.
Okay.
So I got kind of a question, maybe you're gonna address this and you will tell me, but as we're looking at this and with what we know is being developed now, the water ends up stopping right there by Lewis Central somewhere, right? One of your water lines that heads down, or Council's Waterworks.
Oh, yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if we were to extend that line, say we went down Pioneer Trail, took that out to 240th, and we wanted to tap on these other developments out there, are you saying based on this map that those areas would then be required to be part of that annexed, if they're within this map?
But it would depend upon what growth area classification they fall within.
So
And we're not the waterworks.
Yeah.
So they go all the way to Underwood. I mean, yeah, they do what they want to do.
We just have a lot going on out there, and we have future plans to do a lot in that area.
But that area is right outside the 2-mile limit.
Right, we just talked about possibly going to 3, so that's why I'm just.
But we studied the 3 because we don't want to be in the position that we don't know what's going on a mile outside of the 2-mile district. This agreement still just goes to the 2-mile agreement.
And that subdivision will have already occurred.
Yeah, I'm just thinking long-term, like, we start putting stuff out there, it would make more sense to make sure the roads are to the city standards so that we're not having to go back later on and redo it, and we could just do it.
We are going to talk a little bit about that further in this.
That's part of the conversation there. I'm glad you're thinking that way though, Justin, because that's part of the study. All right, so city growth areas B, so this would be land located within the study that is a priority for growth in an urban development pattern. It's identified as having access or planned access to services, including water, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, electricity, and gas. It has projected for access to a roadway network. In most instances, we can service it by existing infrastructure and extensions and would not necessarily require an extension of new main trunk lines. And this area will be annexed as subdivision or development occurs. So, just kind of highlighting these areas. So think about, the intersection of Greenview Road and Eastern Hills Drive now where the roundabout's at. And then as you go north of the city limits, just right off of Railroad Highway, and then right off of Old Railroad Highway as well. And then just north of 92, just kind of south of well, I guess that would be north of the intersection of Eastern Hills Drive and 92. So just a few pockets that we've identified, and then the South 192nd Street area, we've also identified as being a city growth area, 1B as well. And then further south as you get towards the interchange there with Mills County. City Service Area 2, so this is land that lies between areas that will likely be developed to urban densities and areas that will remain rural in character. These areas are serviced to an extent that urban densities would achieve, but the timing and service extension is uncertain and a level of development should be allowed in the transitional time. So I think that gets back to some of the comments that you had, Justin. Areas would be developed to a city standard, so that as annexation and absorption in the city occurs, it will arrive and it won't create nonconformities. We want to try and limit that as best as possible. And then this area is suitable for some level of development, provided it does not hinder the full development of the parcel at a later date. So this is what you would see outlined in kind of that goldish yellow color. And really, it really takes in most of that Pony Creek Basin, as well as kind of the remaining Mosquito Creek area here just north of the city limits.
And on that, Chris, I think when we hire a consultant to look at the future sanitary extensions, we'll probably have them look at both the Pony Creek and then that upper Mosquito area, but they may come back to us and say, well, the existing sanitary sewer in Mosquito Creek is only 5 foot in diameter, and it can really only take on another 50 acres or something like that. And then we would want to come back to both your body and city council to amend that, retract that orange area and put more out, more in the way of the county, like the estate lots, that sort of thing that Matt mentioned earlier. So you may see that map change a little bit, but that's our thinking right now on the area, city growth area 2.
And then the last area would be a county development area. So really, these are just areas that are just, you know, primarily rural and agricultural in nature. There's no plans or, you know, prospects of getting, you know, urban services out there. Most development would occur with well and septics. You know, there could be some rural water out there. And then your transportation system is really considered consisting of gravel roads and rural cross sections. And that's what you would see highlighted in blue, you know, kind of on the periphery of the city growth area 2. So that's just how we categorize the different land areas. Again, we have 4 today. We'll have 4 moving forward, except there won't be 2 county development areas. It's now been consolidated to 1. So what we can talk about now is the individual goals set out for each one of these growth areas. The goals for areas 1A and 1B are fairly similar in nature. I'm not going to read through every single one of them, but kind of the ones that you see highlighted in yellow, you know, really we want to limit subdividing acreages that are not provided with full services. And it goes back to regions that we've already discussed here today. We don't want to hinder or preclude ourselves from being able to extend the infrastructure, you know, as the development occurs.
So let's just, I want to give you, because this happens all the time on our side, on the county side of things. If someone wants to divide their property up, and I know we want to limit doing that, I mean, is the workaround that we just maybe meet with you guys and say, hey, I mean, are you already doing that, man? Like maybe I'm just asking a dumb question. But.
No, what we've done in these areas now is there is a caveat provided in there, but it does depend on the size of their lot that they have. We're not going to have people coming in with a 4-acre chunk of ground saying, well, hey, I want to cut 2 acres off in this area. But if they have, was it 20 acres?
So one thing we built in here is like the Homestead Split.
Right.
So if you have 24 acres and let's say, you know, mom and dad have retired to Arizona, they left the house, the kids, you know, the kids want to sell the house, they have no interest in farming the ground. Well, as part of this updated, you know, study, one of the things that we're proposing is that you could split off the house as a homestead split, provided that it's no more than, I think we said 4 acres, but then you still have to have a remaining tract of at least, you know, 20 left behind. So if you only had, say, 22 acres, you might not be able to do that homestead split. So we're gonna allow some subdivision to occur, but we still need to make sure there's tracks left behind that are suitable in size that could be developed to
And I
reasonable
think you can
density.
explain all of these new mechanisms on your later slides.
I'm just wondering, should I just jump to the scenarios? I think that might answer a lot of the questions.
We're jumping ahead a lot, so you
Man,
can jump to the end.
I'll just jump to the scenarios. I think that'll probably
The
answer.
reason I brought this question up is because we do these minor subdivisions all the time, and they're right there on the boundary. If they're not on the boundary of the 2 mile limit, they're right within it. I mean, we did some just on the north
If
side.
they're in county service area 1 or 2, we have to present them to Brandon and Chris for their approval.
Okay, so you're already tracking it.
Mhm.
Okay.
I tell you what, gentlemen, I'm gonna just jump to the scenarios, because I think that's gonna answer quite a lot of the questions. And then if we need to backtrack to some of the goals, we can do that. So just give me a second here. Let me just kind of flip through it. Okay, so we've already talked about the different growth areas, 1, 2, and county service areas. So here's an example of a property that is in a city growth area 1B. So this is 21622 Greenview Road. It's a 34-acre site. What they're proposing to do is a subdivision on the property. Because it's in a 1B, the application for that subdivision would be submitted to the city for us to review. And then the standards of that subdivision, standards would be how are the roads constructed, stormwater constructed, sewer, that would be to city standard. And it would require immediate annexation because our boundary is immediately north of this site at the bottom of that detention basin for Hills of Cedar Creek. So in this situation, it would require immediate annexation and they would have to build it to city standards today, okay?
And to be clear, these are hypothetical
Yeah,
developments.
these
These are not active conversations.
Yeah.
Greenview Road need improvement?
That would be a conversation as part of that subdivision discussion, would it need to be upgraded and to what extent? And so here inside the document and in that chapter 6 that I provided to everybody, there's a matrix that we've kind of laid out, and it's very straightforward. When this request would come forward, any planner on the city staff could just go right down the table. So growth area 1B, okay, it's a subdivision request, okay, great. The city's gonna review it. All right, so based upon your location and how you're classified, yes, it requires immediate annexation.
Well, and Chris, likewise, if the county gets the initial phone call, they can see immediately, oh, it's in area 1B, we need to put you into contact with the city.
Correct. Okay, example number 2. So this is at 21957 Chestnut Road. So this is in a city growth area 2. It's a 26-acre tract of land. What they're proposing to do is the homestead split that we just talked about. The kids want to sell off the house and the farmland, or they want to retain the house. So that application would be submitted to the city. And in a growth area 2, there would still be city standards applied to it. Now, we recognize that it may not always be possible in a growth area 2 for them to have sanitary sewer. So perhaps one of the things that we've discussed is that when that subdivision would be designed and created, there would maybe need to be some type of package treatment plant or some type of community septic system so that when sanitary sewer did arrive to that site, they disconnect from it and then they hook onto the sewer, and then hopefully, as part of that subdivision design, whatever common area that they use for that package plant or for that common septic treatment facility, that could then be converted into maybe another developable lot or perhaps some community open space for that development. So it's not just a remnant unused parcel. I mean, that's the hopeful idea. That might not always be the case, but that's what we're looking at. Now here, this is one of the tools that Brandon talked about earlier. So right now at this location, it may not be possible to annex into the city. We understand that. So with the growth area 2, you now have the opportunity to enter into an annexation agreement with the city. And basically what that agreement would be is that, either at a certain time in the future or as utilities arrive, that you and any successors assigned to that property will not contest annexation and you will come on board voluntarily. So again, I think that's a huge difference compared to how we operate today. Today it's you have to annex right now, and you're going to need to get all 18 neighbors between your property and the city's limits to get on board. Here, we're now providing a solution to where you don't have to annex today, but we do want your commitment in the future that when annexation does occur, you and anybody else that you sell that land to will not contest that annexation.
We let you perform your subdivision action and delay your annexation to you know, whatever, if it's when maybe we say it's when the utility is there, or when it's adjacency, let's say other development has finally caught up and now it's across the road and now you're in. I think what this does, it's a great balance of allowing subdivision activity to occur ahead of time without requiring immediate annexation, but also preparing that area for development at city standards, like you mentioned, the roads and utilities, et cetera. And in some ways too, it would reward developers and landowners to make those investments very near the time that the sewer is arriving, because the sewer is going to have to start from the lowest point and work its way to towards the northeast. So if you time your development right, you're not off the system for very long, or your timing is such that you're able to get on day one, or perhaps you even outlay a little bit to extend the facility to get to the main trunk sewer more quickly. So I think we've built in a lot of balance and flexibility to where it wasn't there by our current policy.
So I'm guessing then that the annexation agreement, there'd be a stipulation in that agreement that says sewer and water will be here before it's annexed.
Not necessarily sewer or water.
Yeah, I don't know if we can commit to that. I mean, I think those agreements, I mean, they could be specific to that particular development, or it could be a boilerplate template. I don't know. We got to kind of work out that language as to what would be that triggering mechanism. But for right now, we want to build into policy a mechanism that would allow for some type of annexation agreement to occur.
And that goes back to the mayor's point earlier, is if we provide opportunities to do multiple subdivisions in that basin over the next several years, we start to get hemmed in and we can't extend the infrastructure through it. There's no mechanism to bring them into the city. We get a lot of those issues that we're already facing today out there.
Then what's the benefit of signing an annexation agreement if there's no guarantee that you'll have city water or city sewer?
We don't guarantee city sewer. We've got many areas in Council Bluffs that don't have sewer.
Should we continue that process of annexing people and?
Well, and I tell people that call and complain to me, you know, when I bought my lot, I paid for streets and water and sewer. When you bought your lot, you paid for streets and water. And so, am I to pay for your sewer? And you know, it's a little arbitrary, but DeLong does not have sewer. I'm trying to think where else. Twin City does now, but Twin City didn't have sewer at one point.
Like Indian Hills kind of situation too.
So I guess, Tim, I think the benefit is with this agreement, you're now being able to develop that property. Whereas right now, if you wanted to do it, it would be automatic annexation. And in most instances, it's just not possible because of where you're geographically located at. So I think that's the compromise that we, the city, are saying, okay, we can allow some development to occur, but when the development occurs, you need to build it to a city standard. And that may not include sewer right away. I mean, it may be that common treatment plant. But in the future, when sewer arrives, you will connect to it and you will not contest that annexation. So I think that's the balance we're trying to strike here.
You mentioned common treatment plant. What do you mean by that?
It could be an honest, well.
Large septic?
It's what, I'm trying to think what his name, did the project out on 92.
Mings.
Yeah, Bob Mings is doing in his new, or at least talked about doing it. I'm not sure.
You could do it ultimately. You could do a common sewer, a common septic system, depending on how many homes you're gonna put there. You could put in one large septic system that they all funnel to. They also have packaged, basic sewer, little small sewer treatment plants that are just nothing more than a giant filter, runs through it. You get a permit through the DNR, it allows you to discharge the filtered water out on the ground, because basically by the time, when it runs through that. So the technology is catching up and it's becoming more affordable, that you do see some developers start to look that way. The Gretna Mall out there, the outlet mall, had its own little sewer treatment plant for a long time.
Well, I'm just thinking, I think that's a great idea and we should do that, but I'm just curious, do the developers put that hat on and say, well, that common system costs X dollars to put in versus having the homeowners just pay to put a septic on their own lot? I mean, Is the government gonna try to come up with a way to help them cover those costs, or are we just doing that through?
What it would do for them though, see the part that it would do for them is that it would allow more density in that area. So you may, without that package plant, you're looking at a 2-acre lot. You put in that package plant, then the lot sizes dramatically get smaller, cause you got water there. So
Well,
that's,
and you're gonna be building streets, so you want some cost recovery
Right.
on your lots. You wanna be able to get enough lots in to recover the cost of building your street, because your street's gonna be the same length approximately, whether you have 2-acre lots or if you have more of the, lots of the size of like Whispering Oaks or Cedar Creek.
Is the sewer system, the small sewer system, are they tiffable? If that's a word?
You can do a greenfield TIF, but it doesn't get you enough money to do it. I think like 53% can go to the developer and the other 46 or 47% has to go to low to moderate income housing.
45.3
is tough.
Well, and so really that package plant option is just out there as something available. If they want to jump way ahead of the sewer system and get way out there and they're able to make the numbers work for themselves, and maybe calculate how many years perhaps they think that the sewer will get there, then that's an option for them that we're proposing that's not there today. But if you're really smart, I think you're timing it, you're looking really closely at how and where that sewer is coming so that you don't have to construct your own system.
Well, I just, we kind of talked about it in our meeting last week, I'm naming neighborhoods my grandfather built actually, but like Wildwood, Beverly Manor, there's all these checkerboard neighborhoods right in that areas that obviously you're trying to avoid getting into. But right now, we have a lot of development that's just right on that edge, and so it's, I don't know, we can go to Heartland and say, for example, hey, you're building this new neighborhood, let's have a common sewer system, because down the line this could be annexed. How do we do that so that I don't want to say influence them, but find a way to make it beneficial for them to do it too.
One of the things they're gonna do is, you might do the Adams farm, it's gonna cost me X. If I buy the Jones farm, it's a much lesser cost, and so that will help to development occur.
So Brant's Farm is for sale, for example, right off Woodland Trail, which is gonna be right on your edge of your 2-mile mark because of where Google is. And that's 130 acres that is potentially developable someday. So the water line that we're putting in is gonna go right there. So you see what I'm getting at, I just wanna make sure that we're offering these things to our developers, to make sure they're meeting these standards, because I envision that someday being, council's proper, eventually.
Well, I think we also, when you look at the Wildwoods, none of us in this room participated in that review and approval, and, it's to a point now where some of those people, their septic systems are constantly failing, and, do they get sewer, do they replace it? I think we're trying to avoid replicating those scenarios in the future, and I think, by building in the flexibility, but also a commitment that they're gonna build this to a city standard, I think that we can, prevent that from happening again in the future, which is why I think having that common treatment plant probably makes most sense for those developments that are kind of way out ahead of the curve, way out ahead of that sewer line versus just the on-site septic systems.
What's different about the roads? Obviously.
curb, gutter, storm sewer.
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
The hypothetical that you got up here right now is, where's that at?
This is off Chestnut Road, sir.
Okay.
So you look at neighborhoods like Meadowview Parkway or Heartland Estates or whatever it's called. That doesn't have any of that, but how easy would it be to put that in down the road, down the line, or is it even worth it?
Well, Meadowview Parkway, the way that those are large estate lots, right? Would it ever necessarily make sense to go in there and do that part too? And probably not, when you look at how much you're gonna gain financially for those parts. That's why the areas that you're talking about are they're a little bit too far south, that they're not gonna make it to the sewer treatment plant on the everything that the city has thrown out there so far. And that's why that area is really good for your large residential estate lots, whether well, septic, all of those things.
And really, this area shown in orange here that Chris has up is primarily just raw ground. We're not retrofitting or proposing to retrofit any of the existing county neighborhoods.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, and then the last example we have is just for a county development area. So this is 19704 Minster Spring Road. It's in a county development area. They want to do a subdivision. The application goes to the county. It develops the county standards.
Shady Lane,
Is this you?
it's right next door to me.
We did not select.
We did not, so, yeah.
Surprise. No, it's.
So annexation is not required here, so,
You like number 5 then?
yeah. So,
Now, you may wanna consider including that.
Yeah, no, that's like Shady Lane, wasn't it?
South of you.
Yeah, I think
That
it's
was
out.
just purchased.
Where's that cap on it?
Mhm.
Just kind of just finalizing it. So next steps, so once this study is adopted, we anticipate both the city and county will adopt it as part of their comprehensive plans. And then we'll do an update to our 28E agreement. From there, we've also discussed with Matt Wyant assisting his department with creating a set of what we're going to call unified development standards for areas out, the 1A, 1B, and city growth area 2. So that would be, what would the roads need to look like? We've talked about even potential some land use scenarios there as well, like what type of land uses would make most sense. The city's gonna work on completing their sanitary sewer study within that 2-mile ETJ area. And then, as Brandon alluded to earlier, once that study comes back in, we'll go back and modify some of these land use scenarios based upon what areas are most feasible for sanitary sewer and then which ones are not, and then we'll address those accordingly. So those are sort of the next steps, but.
Point number 2 on this, if I can just interject real quick, Chris. It's really important to all of us in the city development office and in the county planning office, along with, you all as the board of supervisors and the mayor. Because what we want to be able to do for the residents in that area really is, instead of, them feeling like they heard one thing from the county and another thing from the city, and then they go to you as the board of supervisors and they complain, then they go to the mayor and they say, well, this is what I'm being told, and by the time the grapevine effects happen, the message that was given is completely off track from where it originally started at. So we've talked about on the forms that we utilize in this area, whether we even include a letterhead of the county and the city, it's signed by both offices, one message on it. And so then that way the residents in that area have a clear understanding of it. We want to make sure that those county residents still feel like they have, or are still getting the county representation that they have, but understanding that we're working within these 2 jurisdictions in that area. So the unified message that comes across there and having those unified development standards will be really important in that area, and especially as, it's becoming more, it's growing, and the frustration levels grow too when they come to the board of supervisors and then they go to the mayor's office. So we want to be able to head all that off by having just that. There's your answer. It's from the city and the county. It's one answer.
Matt, will this study go public?
We still have our next part of it. We've emailed out to the contractor on this. We want to be able to go through the GIS parcel layer data that they have and review where those boundaries, where the city growth area 1A, 1B county areas are, because just the historical knowledge we have, we know where people maybe potentially are going to come in and ask a lot of questions on, and we want to see if it meets what the Chris and his team went through and put it in there, and then make sure that we're kind of on the same part of that, and then talk it back over to the city staff if we do see some areas that well, maybe we feel like it's better in a 1B versus a 1A or a county area.
And just building on what Matt just said, the growth area map that was created, we did that parcel specific. So right now, the service area map we have now, some of those lines are arbitrary. They could fall in the middle of a property, and it's just hard to ascertain that. But we did go parcel by parcel, and I think that's a good way of moving forward, so that, if someone's property is within a growth area too, it's all of it, not just like the frontage part of it and the back half's not. So we did make a concerted effort to make sure it was all of that parcel.
Sounds like you guys really, took the time. Just serious thank you for doing this, because it sounds like the plan that we were hoping to get from the other entity didn't really happen. You guys did a lot of work to get it done, so I appreciate that. I would say, to Matt's point, and it's really what you guys have on the board here, I think we're committed to making sure that that's unified, because I don't like, none of us like ring around the supervisors, because that's what usually happens. They don't like what I say, so they'll call Tim or whatever and try to get one of us to be on their side, and we don't want to do that either, so. But I think this is really important, and, you know, I have a lot of conversations with the councilman too about the future and where we can partner on projects, and I think this is a huge way to do that, where, you know, as we put our development cap on, we're on the same page.
I got a question, the sanitary plant, capacity of that.
I don't know if you all as the supervisors, I don't, we haven't had any discussions with the city yet, but if they're gonna do a sewer study, we're constantly talking about Wildwood and those. I don't know if the county wants to see if we can jump on board with them and contribute to expand that survey into those areas, I mean, or not, but it might not be a bad idea. I know those residents approach you all at various times of the year.
It seems like we've had in the paper that it's close to capacity. Is that?
The cities?
Yes.
Well, maybe.
Commitments.
You know, the problem is that people came in like Google and said, we need an additional 10 million gallons. And we didn't charge them anything. Tyson came in and said, we need an additional 5 million. ConAgra said, we need an additional 5 million. So we went back to them this year. We have new pricing for sewer and said, we'll reserve that amount of capacity if you need it, but it's gonna cost you. And all of a sudden they didn't need it. So we freed up a bunch of capacity,
Okay.
but at some point we're gonna run out again.
Yeah, they did that with the carbon credit too, same thing, on the diesel generation, so they ate up all the carbon credit, that's southern area development you have identified as industrial on your map. So it's great, we can have all kinds of industrial down there, but they can't have any emissions because it's very cold, so.
So I've looked at this Pony Creek Basin, just at very rough numbers, from right where it gets to the hills. Chris, can you just put your pointer down, down where where the hills start at Pony Creek?
Like
A little further north. Yeah, right up to the west, right at the road. There, yeah.
Right there.
So from that point on up through the basin, I forgot the number of acres that I totaled up that were undeveloped, but I remember the yield in terms of if you just developed it with the same kind of neighborhoods as Hills of Cedar Creek or Whispering Oaks, kind of that low density residential, it yielded 10,000 homes. That gives you an idea of the magnitude of what we are trying to do here and the importance of having the right policies in place to where if we are going to lay down that major infrastructure, that we make sure it's sized right from day one, because it would have to be sized right for 10,000 plus units on day one and laid in the ground that way. You can't resize pipe after it's been laid down, so.
Is it Steve Jensen?
Yeah.
Is he the one who's been coming over?
He's worked a lot with the Sarpy County projects, yes, Steve Jensen.
Yeah, so Steve Jensen's been a part of our study sessions as we've worked through this, and he's talked to us a lot about how, you know, Sarpy County is gonna be a fully sewered county. But it does seem as though, I mean, we're able to learn a little bit from what they've done over there to where they may kind of outprice some of their lots, which is what's gonna make Potawatomi County more attractable, I believe, than Sarpy County, is the sewer fees that are getting tacked onto their lots out there. And some of them, the homes are already built, and now they're getting tacked on there, or pricing people out of them.
Well, and the Sarpy County plan includes multiple small plants and lift stations and stuff that you would not have that here.
What kind of money are they? Do you have an idea?
To hook up in Sarpy County, pretty close to $5 grand.
$5 grand to hook up the sewer?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad price.
But it was.
Look at the septic.
Yeah, but then you're paying.
But it's much higher than anywhere else in the metro area right now.
You put that on, you put their sewer development costs on top of their lot cost, and that's what's nailing them.
And Jensen, if you don't know Steve Jensen, he was the Omaha Community Development Director for many years. And now they hire him pretty much full-time along with many other communities. He's a council plus born and raised, so he's got some interest in seeing us be successful.
How do you address the Wildwood areas? You know, we can't just, I shouldn't say we, the city can't just annex them. It has to be voluntarily, right?
Oh, well.
So it doesn't do you any good to put it doesn't do the city any good to put sewer in if they won't let you annex them.
So the interesting thing, I sat right next to Scott Bell in the hearings when we tried to do that.
Oh, boy.
Both of us kind of started doing this during, as they started. But we tried to annex that area, and at one time it was a really premier neighborhood in the area that where many doctors, lawyers, and dentists lived at the time, and it was interesting in that they actually put a full-page ad in the paper that made it look like it was coming from residents in the west end of Council Bluffs saying if we let the city annex the rich people, they're only gonna take care of the rich people and they're never gonna take care of us, so vote against it. And Hannafin was running for re-election at the time, he didn't wanna get involved, and we couldn't market anything in the paper, and it just went down in flames big time. And now, unfortunately, their septics have gotten old and tired, and they wanna come into the city, so.
Well, they want to come into the city maybe if their septic is failing soon, but if you were the guy that just replaced yours 2 years ago, you don't want to come in.
There was that tipping point that we were really coming up close to a few years ago, and I believe we've kind of crossed that tipping point now. I think it was Rosebud out there in Wildwood. You could have almost gone out there and declared it a blighted area. A lot of those individuals lost their homes, and then they became, I would say probably 80% of them on that street were rental properties now, where investors came in and bought them and put those filtration systems in. The filtration systems are coming down in price. And what Wildwood did, luckily, was they have that large green space, the park in between them, and so they do allow easements out into that area to put in new septic systems, but they're putting them out into those different easement areas. Now, that helps a certain number of homes around that circle, but there are other developments, you know, Hilltop and things like that, they don't have that. And their roads are even worse than what Wildwood has in there. So it's a mix of issues when you look between the different areas.
There's no storm drains out there, is there?
No.
Well, it's still desirable neighborhood. I mean, it's in the right, I shouldn't say the right, but it's in a school district that's desirable. It's a good location, close to services.
It is, and we had a couple of real estate agents at the time that came in and said that they would even hold neighborhood meetings with us and try to let the residents know what the increase in their property value they would see if they would allow city sewer to come in and see that rise in their valuation and what they're able to sell their homes
That's
for.
Cloverdale's the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That same Cloverdale, and then Beverly Manor is the same way.
It's an increase of about 25-30% on their taxes. Ballpark.
You'd help us with that.
But then they're gonna be paying $25,000. It seems like a big deal until all of a sudden, you know, you're replacing a $25,000 septic tank, you know?
Yeah, they're definitely around $20,000.
You know, some of these subdivisions, like they're
You
right.
have to put in this new system, and you can't use the old school one anymore, because how close it is to the well, or depending what neighborhood you're in, I guess, but.
And then it's a maintenance fee every year because you have to clean your filters, and if it's got, you know, a lot of them use coconut husks, so they have to get in there and rake those coconut husks around, and it's different permitting and sampling, and
But when the water comes out, you can drink it, right?
that's what they say.
Oh,
I'll bring you a glass.
So the technology,
I'm not gonna.
the technology for these, I don't know, lack of a better word, community septics or whatever is getting to be.
It is more affordable. It is more affordable and it's more maintainable because we have those providers in our area that can manage those styles of systems. And the maintenance agreements were originally your you know, the Advantex people came into our area, they said, hey, we're a cure-all, started putting them in, and then everybody was like, well, they're $26,000. The maintenance agreements were anywhere from $1,000 a year to $3,000 a year. Then now EcoFlow has come into the area. Their prices are lower. They're around $20,000, but they have a set maintenance. You're only, the maintenance provider in the area is, I think it's $150 a year. But then there's add-ons, of course, that happen when they pump it. They're going to charge you for the pumping. When they service the material, they're going to charge you for that as well. So it could wind up being $1,000 in maintenance a year.
Or make sewer look a lot cheaper, isn't it?
Well,
It does
yeah,
make-
if your property value goes up, whatever, $1,000 a year, it's a lot easier pill to swallow than 15 to 25 right now, I mean, I don't know. It's to their benefit, but I also understand the other side of it too, I mean, I have family that live in Beverly Manor, for example, and
Sometimes
They
it
get
is
to
too
enjoy-
expensive, you go out by family fare and they wanna be they're in the city, they wanna be on city, St. Albert's Road was the same deal, they wanna be on the city sanitary sewer system, they got 5 houses out there and the cost is, but it works out to $50,000-$60,000.
Those houses are only on one side of the street, so you
Yeah.
cut that in half.
So we just gonna bring it back, to home here. This is what we've been working on for the last 18 months. And, Chapter 6 we gave to you lays out all the goals, policies, and implementation. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to, send those to me, Matt Wyatt, or Brandon. But, we are looking to wrap this up here fairly soon and get it in front of each one of our planning commissions and then back to the elected officials, for formal adoption.
Has the council seen this then? Is it?
Not yet.
It's good forward thinking. It really is.
Yeah, no, I think you guys, this is
when we're gonna
smart planning.
show it to the council?
We wanted to show it to the county board of supervisors first, and then we were gonna make a decision when to take it to council. There's still some mapping changes, and I added Matt's note here about, showing more county area towards the boundary line. So I wanna get the mapping cleaned up before we take it to, formally to any of the boards and commissions.
So there's some mapping issues you need to take care of?
Well, yeah, I mean, nothing like a game-changing mapping issue. There's just some areas that, need to be shown as county right now that perhaps are being shown as agricultural. So we wanna address that up for you guys.
We spent the majority of our time, and I feel like we spent a lot of time on the growth areas, policies within those, the goals within those, what we want to make sure, because that really drives a lot of what we do. So there was a lot of back and forth and good dialogue on making sure that we had all of that really worded out the way that we felt was going to help us in the future moving on, working with residents and everybody. So we still do have, now it's time to really touch up, go through the mapping and
Fine tune everything.
yeah.
So if something doesn't, so let's just say the board, we adopt it, the city council adopts it, we're all on board with this, and then we have this kind of crazy situation that comes along. And the juice is worth the squeeze to actually have a development created somewhere where we didn't really want it. What's the workaround? I mean, do we just get to approve that anyway?
It's
Or
most likely gonna be an annexation agreement, that type of situation, because it's gonna be so far out, in a growth area too, or the county area, it would be an annexation agreement, most likely.
Okay.
And that will happen. I mean, we know that
Well, I
in
know that.
development, somebody's always gonna come in. 90% of them are harebrained ideas that you never hear from again. The 1% of it that actually will circle back around and drive all the way through.
And going back to how Chris started the whole thing with the 2010 map that you showed, that for so many of the areas we get phone calls on, or that Matt and Pam get phone calls on, the answer is, if you're in one of those city areas in that light blue and light pink or purple area, the answer is yes, but you have to annex. And if you're in those kind of outlying areas, like out in the middle there, where your cursor is, the answer is actually no. I mean, you're not gonna annex through a square mile of other property owners in order to do your little subdivision. So I think the whole approach that we took with the county team and the city team together was drawing upon the experience of staff in these requests over the years, and how could we create at least an option now for you to perform your subdivision activity without immediate annexation. And so that's a proposed option now, where what we've been operating on now, it's a very black and white, yes or no kind of response.
So are you saying, Brandon, if somebody came to you in that light blue area, said, I wanna do a subdivision right here, you say no? It can't
No,
be annexed.
we say, yes, you can subdivide, but you're gonna have to show us how you can annex all the way out to wherever you're at, in that light blue area. This is the current policy,
Right.
yes.
So, I mean, they can't, if they can't get annexed, then they can't build it.
That's right.
Well, there's a,
That's why we're trying to do this.
You wanna do it in an orderly fashion, so you can bring the trunk lines out.
Right, and to Mayor Walsh's point earlier, so that we don't have developments that are out in that, let's say that light blue area, that end up getting in the way of that future development, so that it all comes in. And if we're gonna outlay a major infrastructure project like a sanitary trunk sewer, we need to make sure that the numbers work coming back into the system.
It doesn't look like the 2-mile limit changed very much at all.
The boundaries of the
It
city
does.
haven't changed much, so the 2-mile boundary wouldn't change much.
It really is kind of in the southwest quadrant, really, it's kind of scooted out more from that big, excuse me, that Google annexation, but other than that, it hasn't really changed that much.
I wanna see you guys annex Mills County, I just think that'd be fun.
Someday we may be compelled to get down to that interchange, but we haven't yet.
Well, and it seems like, although they're doing a big industrial park that is closer to Glenwood, but it seems like most of their projects are right on that county line.
Yeah, well, it's just
Which means
access,
we're gonna have to
rail.
respond with fire protection and police. And if we have to do that, it only makes sense to annex into Mills County.
So does that change every time in some of these areas that would be annexed? I mean, they get city, police and fire then? Or does it
Yeah, we
still
have,
stay?
on fire, we have a mutual aid agreement that will help out, but in most cases, Mills Township's always been a strong volunteer fire department, but in most cases, that means we're the first ones there and take control of them.
When for some of those industrial fires, the volunteer
Don't have
fires,
any-
they can't handle those.
No, yeah, remember siren, you guys, city came down with that.
Is that it?
I have a question.
No, but I did get a question.
You know, some people are against city development. They want to keep their family farm as a farm, and if they put it into a land trust where it will be ag land in perpetuity, have you considered working around that? I don't know whether there's anybody out there. that
Green
would
farm would be
we already have that. Yeah, I was gonna say, you have Green Farms down there. That was,
It's in a land
trust
trust.
in that land trust for Potawatomi County Community Foundation, and all they can ever utilize it for is that ag land.
Right. So you just have to work around those.
There probably wouldn't be a need to subdivide or do any type of development in those situations, but I mean, have you come across any?
No.
Yeah, so,
You'd end up with something that kind of like Boys Town.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would think that would be the exception though, rather than.
Well, yeah,
Most
it's
cases,
probably,
the value.
probably not, but I didn't know if it was on your radar or not.
Multiple generations want to go down rather than stay in.
There'd be some right on the edge, Matt. I mean, green farms, you got
Yeah, there'll be a few down in
240th,
that area.
you're right on that edge, there's a bunch of them that could land in that situation, but they're.
Well, we don't have, we don't have the 360 degrees to grow, and we,
Yeah.
the topography that we have, this is probably,
At least I'm safe for a few more years anyway, so.
yeah, well, I just think, this is probably as good planning for the future for the people that will be here after we're gone or not in our positions, but, I think the communications is probably the most important, and I don't know how much maybe the contractors are up on all this technology and stuff, but.
We should just hire these guys to do the whole thing anyway. I mean, it sounds like you just finished it out, so.
The consultant did a lot of the background work, but we brought it home.
They should have got done way ahead of time. Thankfully, you guys did it, so thank you.
That's true. Yeah, we need to thank Brandon and Matt, and Chris, and Pam, and your team to get this thing done.
Really impressive.
Hopefully, maybe in our lifetime, we might have, in my lifetime, we might have some
We need that
sewer
subdivision,
and water and stuff.
subdivision right next to Wickman's place.
I think it's gonna take off in this area.
We got 205th Street in the growth plan.
Just remember, I'm really nice to you, so if we come to you with a proposed subdivision just right on the line, you'll work with us, right?
There's always an annexation agreement perhaps.
Wish those laws were a little different, but they are what they are.
That's not going.
Thank you guys very much. Thanks for coming over.
Thank you for your time, and
thanks.
it's been great working with your team also, so I appreciate that. We're gonna continue to work with them, and
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. More with you. Yeah, just shoot me a couple of dates and times.
We're not we'll be back.
Yeah, I just.
Justin, it's gonna come back to you for the adoption process, so, I mean, you'll get a second crack at it.
I had a developer call me the other day about trying to do something that was a little wild hair, but realistic, and I just wanna make sure we're all on the same, you know, that matches what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay, moving forward, I'm gonna make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 21.5, parent 1, parent C, for discussion decision on pending litigation.
Second.
Roll call?
Chairman Bell, Supervisors Shay,
Aye.
Wickman,
Aye.
Roby, Schultz.
Aye.